Welcome back to Creatives Rule the World. Hey there, it's Tracy Matthews, Chief Visionary Officer of Flourish and Thrive Academy, and also the ringleader of a brand new sales challenge called Obsessed, which I am super excited about. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit more about my journey. Over the past 30 years, I've generated over $22 million across my brands. Actually, I think it's a little bit more. This was like earlier last year when I did this math. But we're just going to roughly call it 22 million. I have some big goals. I hope within the next 5 years, I get that number to 50 million. And I want to share with you today some of the ways that I've been able to, as a creative, as a visionary, as an artist, be able to generate so much income and wealth for my brands. And I actually have some big goals this year, which I'm going to share, maybe not on this episode, but another episode, because I think it's fun. I made a commitment to myself that I was going to share the journey of me hitting one of the biggest goals that I've ever hit in my entire life. So we're going to play around with that. And I want to just dive in today to talk a little bit more about what makes a brand iconic and how iconic brands actually do things differently. Now, here's the cool part about this. I haven't just built one business. I've built 5 different businesses and counting. Jason and I are creating so many different cool things with AI right now, and we're super excited about it. Here's the thing, every single business, every single journey, every single step that I took, I learned something new about building a brand. I learned something new about what it really took to step into a new chapter or a new product or a new era of what I was creating, right? And so at each point of these like junctures or whatever you want to call it, the payoff was different. This is not a highlight reel. I'm going to be sharing some of the highs, some of the lows, some of the challenges that I'm experiencing now, and how I'm supporting people in really elevating their sales process and getting into a daily rhythm of making daily sales the new norm. Because here's the thing, and I've been, even when I had was making millions a year in one business, I would say that we didn't always have daily sales coming in. We had some revenue coming in every single day because of payment plans and recurring revenue types of things. But getting to a space or getting to a pace of having daily sales in your business takes a little bit of, goal setting and vision, takes strategy, and also takes consistency, which is the biggest part of this. Because I know a lot of us, our energy ebbs and flows, and we're like, am I being cringe if I'm always selling? Am I being cringe if I'm doing X, Y, and Z? But you making money with your business is your birthright. And why are you doing this if that's not what you desire, right? If you just want a hobby, that's totally cool. Have a hobby. But what I want to help you do is build 6- and 7-figure brands, maybe multiple 7-figure brands, 8-figure brands. Like, I'm here for it. Like, whatever you want to do, I am here for it. And so today, what I want to do is to show you what it really takes, but also to give you some hope, because I feel like sometimes people they look at people maybe like me, which it's always makes me laugh a little bit, because even after all these years, I still feel like I don't know what I'm doing. And I think a lot of successful entrepreneurs feel that way. And that's just normal. It's because we are learning, and there is always going to be people who are a few steps ahead of us. And that's perfect. That's how it should be, right? And I want to really pull back the curtain on what it took to get to a place where we're having daily sales in our business. So I currently run a couple of businesses. Some of them are kind of sister companies that are related. I have a company called Flourish and Thrive. Jason and I launched an AI app called Desire AI. I still work with a few people doing custom jewelry. That is like a little bit of a side hustle right now. And I'm building my personal brand where I have programs and I coach people one-on-one, and also in my program, The Launchpad. Those are all the things I'm working on right now, which is, you might be thinking, wow, that's a lot, Tracy. And it is a lot. And some things are requiring more of my focus than others, because we have a desire to get our app Desire AI to 1,000 monthly users by June. So that's a big initiative. And I also have a strong desire to be serving more people in my program, The Launchpad, which is a really incredible program where I do daily audio coaching for people to help them with their sales, to help them step into more visibility, and to help them clarify their voice, their vision, and clean up their vibration and their energy, right? When it comes to showing up every day as a creative. So you'll be hearing more about that in the coming weeks. I want to talk a little bit more about this, because at every single step of the juncture, when I started a new business, I always thought it was going to roll out a certain way, but it never happened that way. For instance, when I left Nordstrom to start my first company full-time, I was selling jewelry part-time, right? I thought that I would just get this office on Columbus Street in San Francisco, that I would have all these referrals and leads coming in. I mean, this was in the 90s in San Francisco, so we weren't selling anything on the internet yet. I had to do so much hustle to actually make sales, and it was not what I expected. I just thought I would, because I had made the commitment, the universe was just going to supply sales to me, and it did not. In fact, about 6 months in, even though I did have some customers and I was making some sales, my husband at the time, Mike, said to me, Tracy, you have to start making sales a regular thing, or else you're going to have to go back to your job at Nordstrom. And to me, that was literally the worst thing that could possibly happen at that time. I was so burnt out. I'd worked in retail for many, many years. And at that stage of my life, I knew that there was no going back, because I had started looking for jobs and I was like, oh, I could be a receptionist at like the furniture store. I'm like, no, that's not what I'm doing. I'm an entrepreneur. This is who I am. And I'm going to figure out how to make it work, because I believe so much in the work that I do it. And I'm pretty good at it. Like, I have a product that people love to buy. That lit a fire under my ass. So what I had to do was get into a consistent sales rhythm every single day. And that was meaning that I would use the morning hours of my day to focus on revenue generating activities. That might look like calling stores, because that was what we did back then. Email wasn't as much of a big thing. That might look like doing research. That might be looking like going into a store and trying to locate who the buyer was. Like, keep in mind that back then there was no internet where we could just do research on stores. No, not everyone had a digital footprint, right? It was literally like walking up and down streets, like trying to get more information about who was selling and who was buying, asking for referrals from friends. So that was my daily rhythm every single day. I would spend at least 2 to 3 hours. Then I would fulfill orders. I asked my friends for so many referrals. Like, I had a friend from Portland. What are the best stores in Portland? And she's like, you must get into Twist. I'm going to talk to them. We know the buyers. My parents buy from them all the time. She created a connection. I ended up faxing them my line sheet. A couple of days later, I got a $4,000 order, which at that time was like bonkers insane. It felt like so much. I actually hired my first production assistant because we probably shipped like 150 units in that order. I'd never shipped that many pieces at that time. So the hustle, and not like the bro hustle, like getting that consistency, and that's what I mean by hustle, actually is the thing that builds the momentum that keeps the sales coming in. And so what I've known in every single season, when my first business was taken out in the great market crash of 2008, and I had to start my new jewelry company, it was a totally different business model. I had to figure out a new way to sell. And the same fears, the same energy, the same hesitation, the same cringe factor came up in that business too. I'm like, how do I sell online? This is like before Instagram even. How do I promote my business in a way that is going to get people? So I figured it out. Took a program where I learned how to sell online. I learned how to get people to opt into my email list. I learned email marketing. And then eventually learned social media, which I teach today to the whole marketing funnel to everyone. And it was something that once I got into a consistent rhythm, and I also understood a little bit more about what my goal was. That was a huge part of this second business, being very clear. Okay, so if I have a goal of making $15,000 a month in profit, if I reverse engineer my profit margins, here's about how many pieces I would need to sell a month. And I figured it out that it was 5 to 10 pieces based on my current price points at that time. And when I could do that, I could actually gamify it and make it fun. Next time with Flourish and Thrive, same thing. Like, how do you sell coaching? Like, I didn't even know how to do this. How do you sell a one-to-many program? I got into a rhythm. We figured out processes. We learned how to market in a new way, and on and on and on and on. And things are always changing. It's part of the reason why, even with Desire AI, we're just learning how to sell it again. And so what I'm telling you is every season, whenever you hit a plateau, whenever you kind of hit some sort of stagnation point, it requires you to get back into a sales rhythm and reevaluate what it is that you're doing. Because if you're not getting daily sales, or if you're not getting into a consistent rhythm of sales, because it might not make sense for every business to have daily sales. I was designing $25,000 engagement rings. I have a custom project right now with a budget of like 15 to 20,000. Like, I'm probably not going to be selling those every day, doing a business part-time, like very part-time, that's based on only referrals from people who have worked with me before, because that's how I'm running that business now. So that wouldn't make sense to have like daily sales, but that's a great referral, right? Like getting a $25,000 custom project. That rhythm is something that you decide, and we get into it by finding the way. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about like what actually was consistent through all of these moments, all of these pivots. So the first thing, first and foremost, is that sales is the lifeblood of your business. And if that is not your number one focus, then guess what? You might not really have a business. And I've been confronted with this recently too, because, I'm launching my personal brand and I've been inviting people to like find my new way, because I worked for many, many years, the very specific audience of jewelry designers, which is fantastic. And I'm trying to branch out because I have such expertise in so many different ways. I've scaled a multiple 7-figure business, working as a mentor and coaching and having digital products in different ways that people can come in. Now we're building an AI business that we hope to scale to 7 figures by the mid-year. And I'm also supporting people in a variety of different ways in different seasons in my personal brand. And so it's always like finding the new way, right? And the one thing that is very clear is that you need a brand frequency. You need, I call it the 4V founder frequency, because if you're following me, you know that I lean very deeply into building a founder-led brand. And it's very important. And the reason why I'm so adamant about stepping into the spotlight with your business, like when all that faceless marketing came out, I was like, not for me. That's not really how people connect. Like people buy from people, and I've known this forever. And the one thing that Jason and I get into a little thing with, he's like, I can make you systems that will run your entire business. You don't ever need to work with people again. And I'm like, I need to work with people because that's how I operate. And so as a people person and someone who understands how relationships work and understand that sales is the core part of selling, is actually building rapport and relationships with people, I am of the belief that the people who are stepping in front of the camera, you don't have to be a dancer or influencer or whatever, and building their founder-led brands will be the leaders in this space of AI. I just saw a reel recently. It was from Jen Gottlieb, I think, and she just did this thing about how all these influencers now are actually AI generated video. And as someone who's building an AI generative tool that can create AI photography and probably potentially video, there's a fine line when it comes to this, because I definitely think that there is a space for AI photography for a jewelry business owner who can't afford to necessarily do $5,000 photo shoots every single quarter. There's a great space for that. It saves a brand a significant amount of money. And our tool creates beautiful photographs and will eventually create beautiful videos. But do I think it's cool for us to like simulate ourselves in AI? Like that's to be questioned, And so there is this fine line. And the more that we see AI coming onto the scene, the more people are going to want to know like who is the real person behind the brand. And so it's going to be more and more important for these founders to show up and share their point of view, share their vision, share their voice, their point of view, their messaging, the things that they stand for. Become visible, right? Because visibility leads to sales. And then also be in a space where your energy is magnetic, that vibration that you bring to the table, because that's what gets people to buy. That is what gets people to buy. Here's the thing, like I don't really like being told what to do. I am very good at reverse, even though I'm not a strong systems builder, I'm very good at like observing patterns and reverse engineering things and seeing how things work, which is, I find this really fascinating about me because I'm not a systems person and I'm not someone who's like super detail oriented. And what I will tell you is that there are patterns and flows across all of the different businesses that I've done. First, number one, you need to kind of know where you're going. And this is where I think the vision part becomes really powerful. You can call it goals, you can call it vision. And the one thing that I've been talking about on the podcast lately too, is that when we have unrealistic goals that just feel so big and inspiring, it actually will motivate you or most people to do epic things. And I am here to support people in doing epic things. So one of the things that I did every single season was create these ridiculous goals. Like getting 1,000 users into Desire AI by June will be an epic feat. And at first Jason's like, let's be practical. But then we got on the same page. He's like, yeah, why not go for it? If we make it, we make it. If we don't, we don't. But the whole point of this is that this tool is awesome. It is changing people's lives. We can certainly figure out a rhythm to get enough people in on a monthly basis, and it is changing the game. So if anyone is here listening and you're a jewelry designer and want to check out Desire AI, I highly recommend that you do it, because as we go into these next seasons, the investment is going to continue to go up. Don't wait. Get in now. You're locked into whatever rate you join at, and we love that. Anyway, slight plug for Desire AI. Doing things your own way is really important. So having the vision, also creating a rhythm. So the rhythm that works for you, you want to definitely be selling when people are online and paying attention. So if you like to work at 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. and most of your customers are in the same time zone, you might be a little bit challenged. But finding that rhythm of when your energy is the highest and most turned on to be stepping into sales. And then finally, wash, rinsing, repeat, getting into a consistent pattern. That consistent pattern, that consistent workflow, that consistent way of you continuing to move forward is how you scale your sales. Now, it seems simple, and if you've been able to figure it out on your own, awesome. But if you think that you're doing that and it's not working, then we got to tweak the plan. And so that's what I'm doing in my free challenge called Obsessed. For 5 days, we're going to be working through the sales rhythm that will get you into a consistent workflow. And then I'm also offering a VIP upgrade where you can work with me for an extended basis and a mastermind experience. And it's going to be super awesome and super fun. I'm very excited just for a couple of weeks. If you want to check that out, we get started March 9th. I will definitely have a link in the show notes. That's the consistent part of it. It's like the business might be different, but the overlay is the same. Like there's these certain standards or these certain ways that we show up, these certain processes that we show up that are existent in every single business that I've ever started. And so every time I started a new chapter, I had to get recalibrated, had to get realigned, and had to figure out what that sales flow was for that particular business. And each of them have been quite different. So now I want to talk a little bit more about what it really took to generate $22 million in revenue over my career. And I feel like that number is going to get to like hundreds of millions by the end of my life, because we're in such an expansive phase with my businesses right now. And I'm going to share with you and continue to peel behind the scenes of what I'm actually doing and share a little bit more about what it taught me. And for anyone who has some sort of aversion to hearing things about like dollar amounts and numbers, like I really want to talk about this in a way that it's not cringy, because there are a lot of influencers online right now, a lot of business coaches who talk about like, oh, I just had a $4 million month. Like, come follow me and I'll show you how to do a $4 million month. Like, I'm not here to talk about like how much money I've made to like make anyone feel a certain way or to flex in a certain way. It's just for information to show you what it actually took, because, I learned a lot in this process. And I think that there's a lot here that can be taken away, because what I will say, like in those early years, like for me, I doubled a lot in my business. My first year in business, I did 50,000, second year, 150, third year, 250. And then it was like doubling for a while, and then it slowed down. So like maybe the fourth year, fifth year, like I only picked up another 100,000, and then eventually got to $1 million in sales in 1 year for my jewelry business. And I'm mentioning that because at each different stages, like the scaling happened in a different way. And I mention that because when I had to change literally who I was, the identity of who I was, to go from being someone who made $50,000 a year to go to someone who was 150, to someone who was 300, to someone who was making $1 million, to someone who made multiple millions in a year. And I mention that because at every stage of the game, I had to change who I was, and I could not continue operating out of the past version of me. And then when there were dips like this last year, because I've been very vocal and sharing, like we basically descaled my company on purpose. Financially was not a great year, but that's okay. Like it was on purpose, so I'm okay with it. It was something that was very intentional so that I could reground and step back and get clear. Okay, where am I going? And sometimes we have to do that. And then also stepping into the identity of someone who could potentially make $1 million in personal income in a year, and then have a business that had like a 50% or higher profit margin per year. So there's a lot of different things that I'm working through in my own identity, because at different steps of the way, when we start to hit a upper limit problem. Okay, so I want to share another story about what self-sabotage looks like, because when you hit a certain level of success and then things aren't going the way that you expect, like your confidence gets shattered. And I think a lot of creative entrepreneurs self-sabotage themselves and aren't visible enough. And we sabotage the algorithm more than the algorithm ever could for us. And I want to share just one example. I mean, algorithms weren't a thing back then, but of a way that I self-sabotage so badly. So one day I was at Whole Foods buying lunch and my debit card didn't go through. And I'm like, that's weird. I have like $4,000 in that account. Didn't make sense. So I called the bank. They're like, you have, there's a lien on your account. And I was like, what do you mean a lien on my account? So there I was running in the middle of August, which was so hot and muggy, in my Havaiana flip-flops from the Whole Foods to my bank to try to figure out what was going on. And the worst part about it is I had a bunch of jewelry in a safe deposit box there that was worth a lot of money because my apartment had been robbed. And a couple of months before, like it was a doozy of a year. Let's just put it that way. And I remember getting to the bank and this was the moment that started my bankruptcy, because I had, in order to get the judgment and the lien removed, I had to be in a state of bankruptcy so that they could lift the lien off the account. And I had been waiting because I was dealing with some logistical stuff and trying to figure it all out. I eventually had to change my number. And part of that, like my confidence was so shattered during that time that I had a very hard time believing that I could actually be the person who deserved to make millions of dollars again. And it took a lot of work. And I remember a couple of months later, my friend Jessica was just starting to coach, and she had never had any problem making money. She had a job where back then, even when she was making $330,000 a year, living in New York City, that might not seem like a lot of money, but it was a lot. Like to me, I'm like, wow, someone's taking home $330,000 a year. That's a lot of money. And she really worked with me to like change my financial container. And it's a lot of the things that I teach now were from that period of time of how I raised my identity to someone who believed that I deserved to make $15,000 a month in income, that 20,000, 30,000, and eventually like much more than that, but getting into alignment internally with what that looked like. And that deep identity work is so powerful. And I think this is one of the most important things that I wish someone would have told me early on, that when you're like basically, I don't know, I hate to use the word collapsing timelines or jumping timelines, but when you're in that space of like super hyper growth, you need to do this identity work, because you will not be able to hit unreasonable goals that are so astronomical and do what people say, create a quantum leap, without you getting right with yourself and upgrading your identity and believing that you are the kind of person who can generate and hold and create that kind of value in the world. And I use the term value because money is an exchange of energy. Selling is an exchange of energy. And if you are coming from a place of sharing tremendous value in exchange for what you do, guess what? It's an exchange of value. It's not money being exchanged technically. So this is where the nuance comes in, and it can become super fun. Okay, so now I want to kind of weave all of this into what it actually means to you. So if you're about 2 to 4 years into your business, you're already making money, or even earlier or later stage, and you're making money, but you've hit a plateau, and for some reason, you're not seeing that compounding growth, that exponential growth. Like when I went from like going from $300,000 in 1 year to $1 million in a year in my first jewelry business, it required a significant difference in how I was showing up. It required a very strong brand foundation, but also taking different actions. You know, this is the part that I think most people forget. Like in order to 10X what you're doing, you can't keep operating not only out of the same identity, but the same strategies, because like you operating out of the things that maybe worked in the past, while that's good information, we want to definitely use that. The way you're showing up has to tweak and change. So one of the things that I work with my clients on inside the Launchpad and my other programs and my private coaching is to really become a match for the thing that you desire to create. So the cool part about this is that the creative founder who continues to work on the identity foundation and the sales rhythm and the flow and getting into the consistent workflow of what you need to do to generate those daily sales, it isn't just about making more money. What it's about is doing it in a way that actually feels like you. And this is the part that I really want to lean in. I am so passionate about helping people build a business that they love, but more importantly, have a life that they love and the business supports it. And when you get into sales and when you're doing sales in a way that feels so aligned and so exciting and you love what you do and the work that you're doing is just like turning you on every single day, guess what? It becomes so easy to become a magnet to what you want. And so it's just selling in a way that feels like you, that feels good to you. And you're just like excited to show up every day. As my friend Casey says, you're turned on by selling. It's like excited. And so this is the work that I do in the Launchpad every single day. I'm helping people with like these daily calibrations, helping them get their energy up, shift in the identity, shift in the strategy, helping them like really clarify like who they are as a brand so that they can share that message over and over again, because you need to keep like finding new things to say. It's just really about repetition and creating that connection. So I'd love to invite you to come and join me for the Obsessed Challenge. I'm going to have more information in the show notes. The first 5 days are free. There's also an upgrade to VIP where you can work with me for an extended period of time and join like a little mini mastermind for a while and experience a little bit more about what it's like to work with me inside of the Launchpad, my new audio coaching program, which is incredible. I love it. So if any of this story resonated with you, thank you so much for listening. I would love to ask you a favor. Maybe take a little screenshot of this episode, share it in your stories, tag me. I'd love to hear what you think. Reach out to me on Instagram. I'm over at I am Tracy Matthews. And it takes like 2 seconds to give the podcast a rating and review. Like, how awesome is it that you're one of those people who will give someone a rating and review? Tap that little 5-star button and share a little bit more about what you love about this episode, because it helps other people just like you find it. And I am here and I'm on a mission to help millions of people around the world who are creative visionaries, who have magical things to sell and to offer the world, to get those products out into the world so that they can share their genius with everyone. All right, this is Tracy signing off. Ciao for now. Have an awesome day. And I hope to see you in Obsessed and maybe in the Launchpad.